What's going on, YouTube? Welcome to episode 100 of the U.S.S. Enterprise D tutorial. I'm Zero Elite, and I just want to thank you very much for tuning in today's episode. And if you haven't, please don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button, helping me in supporting the channel. I can't thank you enough for that. Before we get into today's episode, I have a poll going on right now on my Discord channel for what my next ship build is going to be. And I generated this list based off of my top build requests on YouTube. So if you haven't voted already, be sure to join my Discord for one. I'll have a link in the description below, and go under my next build poll tab. And the list is as follows: USS Stargazer, Jem'Hadar Warship, Deep Space Nine and Defiant, Enterprise NX-01, USS Excelsior, USS Kelvin, Klingon Warbird, Romulan Valador type Warbird, USS Titan, and Voyager. This poll is going to be going on indefinitely, at least until, well, actually until I'm done with the Enterprise D tutorial, or we're getting close. I want to give everybody a chance to vote, and this poll is going to determine what the next ship build is going to be. So be sure to join the Discord for that. And yeah, so let's go ahead and jump right into today's episode. Not a super long one today, actually kind of short, only about 13 minutes. But we're going to be continuing our work on the outside of the ship, kind of switching gears a little bit like we did on Saturday's episode, working on the exterior of the ship. And today we're going to be focusing on adding in our windows on the uh, back side of the neck, and we're actually going to start adding our escape pods, which will be really cool. So let's go ahead and jump right into it. And what I have up right now, I don't have it up on my screen, but I have it up on one of my other monitors, is I'm looking right now at the back side of the Enterprise D. And you don't have to, match everything spot on. But, this goes into, again, where if you want to build something where people are going to look at it and be impressed, you want to have that reference material to go off of. So what I have up right now is a picture of the back of the neck, and I'm just using this as a reference for how I'm going to be setting my windows up. Now, I'm not really all that concerned about the window size matching the Enterprise D, because one of the issues that I'm going to have a problem with here is that on the actual Enterprise D, the windows are kind of elongated, and you're probably wondering why I didn't do that on my build. The number one reason is because some of the sections of the ship I'm using half slabs as opposed to full blocks, and I do that to get a better cut line. But the problem that will happen with that is that we don't unfortunately have half slab glass windows. So the only thing that we can do in that scenario without it looking janky is just do a single block and have that be the window. Now, at this point, I'm really not even trying to match up my windows with my deck levels. Now, with that being said, there is going to be a lot of windows that match the deck levels. Really what we're focusing on here is the outside scale of the ship, to make the ship feel bigger than it is. And it's all about proportion. That's why we're using a single block for the windows, because the bigger you make the windows, the smaller it's going to make the ship look. Same thing with the escape pods. Now, on my ship, the escape pods are actually a little bit smaller than how they look on the regular Enterprise D. And again, I did this intentionally because I wanted my ship to look a little bit bigger. That's something that I can say, that on the actual Enterprise D, the shuttle, not the shuttle, but the escape pods are a little bit bigger, which is okay. There's not really a set way to do this. I think once this thing is all said and done, I really don't think anybody's going to bat an eye at the size of the windows, or also the size of the escape pods themselves. But these are definitely things that you want to take into consideration, because one of the things we have to account for is that we're not building a one-for-one scale of the Enterprise D. It's pretty close, but it's probably still, it's a little bit smaller than what it needs to be. We did this for render distance to make sure that pretty much the entirety of the ship can be seen from almost any angle. I think the only angle that you can't see the entire ship is from the front view. And I did this to get my proportions right, because otherwise it's literally impossible to proportion out your ship, which is why a lot of times you see these other people that they make these Enterprise Ds, while it's quite impressive the scale that they made it in, there's no way of knowing 100% for certain if everything matches within scale, unless they use a program to build out a 3D rendering of the ship on the computer, which we're not doing. We're building this thing by hand. So what that's all that information is basically what I'm getting at here is that we're just focusing on having the windows as decoration. But again, we're going to have windows that will match up with the decks, but we just want to match up that scale here right now and start getting that detailing. This is something that I have talked about. The Enterprise D, hands down, is going to have the most windows that I've done on any ship build in the past. Those of you that have been with me on my YouTube channel so far know that I'm not super keen on having a ton of windows, because I don't want to, a lot of the times I don't want to go through the headache of trying to figure out how to matching all that stuff up, and what I'll end up having to do is build out the decks and then add in windows later, and then some of the times it doesn't look all that clean because of the scale of the ship that I'm working with. But in this case with the Enterprise D, we're really not having that problem, because what's going to end up happening as we go through the course of this tutorial is that from the outside of the ship, just in the saucer, it's going to look like there's at least 10 decks. But in reality of it, there's really only going to be 5 decks when you take into account the entertainment deck, crew deck, medical deck, primary shuttle bay, and then of course the bridge. But from the outside, it's going to look like it's at least twice as large, and that's because of the scale that we're using the windows and the way that we're going to use the windows to make the ship look larger, which is going to be really cool. It's funny, I learned how to do this kind of stuff by actually from another game playing Planet Coaster, because I had, when I first started getting into Planet Coaster, I wanted to build a more realistic looking park, and I started looking at, you know, how like Universal Studios was built, and more so with Disney and Magic Kingdom in Florida. And what they do a lot of the times is that, if not most of the time, like with Cinderella's Castle, for example, Cinderella's Castle is actually not that big, because the castle is actually biggest at the bottom, and as it goes upward, it gets smaller and smaller and smaller. It's all about perspective. But walking around on the ground level, you would never know that it actually gets smaller as you go up. And what I was able to take from that is that you can have a smaller ship in Minecraft, but if you have even smaller windows in that, it'll help if you have more rows of windows, which may not necessarily translate to deck for deck. You can do things like that to help to make your ship look larger than it actually is. And I think that's pretty cool, you know, and this is one of the reasons why I try to play a lot of different building games, because you never know what you might be able to translate from one game to another. It's kind of where I'm going with that. You can see I'm really not talking about adding the process in which I'm adding in these windows. You don't necessarily have to have them in the same placement as I do. Again, I'm just looking at the backbone of the neck, and I'm just trying to build something that looks kind of similar in the pattern of the way the windows are going on the backbone. But I'm not, you know, handcuffing myself to having that exactly. I'm also trying to do something that looks good. I will say that the back of my neck probably still has less windows than what the actual Enterprise D has, and that's just because I didn't want windows all over the place to the point where we're starting to lose the outside hull of the ship. We're just really, again, we're doing this for enhancement and to get detail out of the ship, because this is something I've actually been looking forward to talking about, is that the Enterprise D does not have a ton of detail on it. If you take out the Aztecing it starts to become very, very difficult to start detailing your ship, which is why we're really only getting into it now, because it took me up until this point in the tutorial series to actually figure out what I was going to do. And I think I have officially decided at this point that I'm not going to really be doing Aztecing on the ship. I might have a couple of detail lines here and there, but I think the current state of the ship on the outside, I think it looks very pretty, and I want to keep it that way. And I don't have the combination of colored half slabs that I need to really build exactly what I want. And for that reason, I'm just opted out of doing the Aztecing. And somebody might say, oh, well, you know, that's not matching the ship, but I make the argument that if you watch Star Trek The Next Generation, it's almost impossible to see the Aztecing. Looking at the ship from a distance, it looks like a cream color or kind of a darker white. And that's going to be a variation with my ship because I've opted of going with the white instead of the cream color or the light grayish color, because I wanted my half slabs to match the full block, so it was seamless. But the point that I'm trying to make here is that when you watch Star Trek The Next Generation, you never really see any of that detailing. So you could just make the argument that, you know, you're not really going to notice it, so there's no real relevance to add it. Another thing, and this is, you know, again, this is why it's important to do your research. Look at what other people have done, not to copy them, but just to kind of give you an idea of the directions that you want to go in with your own build. Before I even started the Enterprise D, I think that was one of the first things that I talked about, that I didn't think I was going to do the Aztecing, because I looked at other people's builds, and while the Aztecing looked good, I don't think it made the ship look very pretty. And it's, again, you know, when you're building in Minecraft using those blocks, um, what I end up noticing with people is that they end up using a darker shade block. So this way you can see all the detailing that they did. If I did do Aztecing, I would use the white concrete. So it was an off-white color, so you could see it, but as you zoom out, you really wouldn't notice it. Perfect example is how we have this outline going on here on the pylons. As you zoom out, you're really not going to notice it that much. That's honestly how I would do it if I did decide to do it. But a lot of people that I have seen, they end up using a darker color block, and I think what ends up happening, this is just my opinion, is that it starts to take away from the other details on the ship. You don't notice these other details as much. I think that's one of the reasons why, you know, I still to this day, I have people comment on my 2016 U.S.S. Enterprise A retrofit saying that that's the most beautiful ship that they've seen in Minecraft. And it's because I took the time to look for those small details to add into the ship. And I'm going to show you guys how to do that on this build. It's going to be no different. But you're going to have to get a little creative in where you're going to find those source material, because I can tell you right now, you're not going to find all of it if you look at just a regular model of the Enterprise D. I ended up having to actually look at a couple of different sources just to get all the detail out of it that I wanted to. And it came down to looking at a couple of different models. I used a combination of a 3D model that I found on Google. I used, I think I used parts of the Eagle Moss Enterprise, and I actually found a toy of the Enterprise D that had a couple of different bits of pinstriping that I thought looked pretty good. And I don't think it's going to be necessarily 100% canon, but here's the thing with the Enterprise D, and I've talked about this in the past, that there's actually been 5 variations of the Enterprise D. So what I'm getting at here is that we've got a little bit of wiggle room. You know what I mean? And with that being said, all these things that I'm adding or going to be adding on the outside of the ship and also the inside, if you don't like them, this is just really meant as a reference point guide to help you get in the direction that you want to go in, and showing you the things that I did on my ship. But it's not meant to be anything like, oh, this is the only way to do it. Those of you that have been with me on my channel know that that's not how I, you know, build or encourage people to build on Minecraft. If you want to build this thing one for one, go for it. If you want to take some liberties and make some color changes or make some aesthetic changes, go for it, because this, at the end of the day, is going to be your ship, and build what you want. Have fun with it. But something I do want to talk about, we're finally getting to the point where we can start building out our escape pods. And as you can see, it's only going to be a single block. And to be honest with you, I think that we're going to be able to get away with doing that. I only started adding a couple of rows on the back side here, and I did that on purpose because I wanted just, to let it kind of marinate and see how it was going to look, and see if this was, if I can make this work, because I think if I built something to scale as far as the escape pods go, I would have had to have done a 2x2 palette for those escape pods, and I didn't want to do that. I'm really trying to up the scale of the outside of the ship here, and this again is one of those things I thought of that, you go with a single block, it's going to make the ship look a little bit larger. Now, I'm going to end up showing you two ways that we can do these escape pods. What I'm doing right now is I'm building them inside the hull, but I believe I'm actually end up going a row up and building them within that row of half slabs, so this way they stick out a little bit. And one of the reasons I decided to do this again is that it was down to texture. On the actual Enterprise D, when you look at the escape pods from a distance, it's flush within the hull of the ship, which is exactly like we have here. But again, I'm trying to get something that's a little bit prettier than that. And I would assume, if you could actually look at a full-scale Galaxy class close to real life, that it would have a little bit of a ridge, or at least a lip, to differentiate the actual escape pod from the hull itself, rather than just being a color line there. And that's ultimately why I'm going to end up doing that. Another reason is because, if I don't know if you can notice it right now, is that as we zoom out, the escape pods, they slowly but surely kind of get lost a little bit in the hull. And again, one of the things that we'll be able to do to correct this is by building it within a row of half slabs with that full white terracotta blocks. This way it sticks out just a little bit. I don't know if we're necessarily have enough time to work on that today, but these are really the starting point to where we're just now getting into the beginning of fleshing out our exterior here. And this will be a slow process as we go. And what I'm doing right now, again, I don't have a picture up, but I'm just looking at a reference picture of the Enterprise D to see where some of these escape pods are at. That's how I'm coming up with my placement on them right now. But something like this, again, it's imperative that if you do one thing on one side, do it on the other, because you want those two sides to match. Because when that stuff starts differentiating from the left and right side, maybe not with just one section, but over a period of time, if you're not consistent with it, your build can start to unravel, and you'll have a lot of inconsistencies and won't look as good. You can see I'm messing around here. I'm trying to get my placement exactly right. But ultimately, what we're going to have to do is have we're going to have to go down at least one half slab here, just so it's the escape pod sticking out ever so slightly. And I think once we do that, it's going to look a heck of a lot better. But again, a lot of this, it's a trial period, You got to experiment sometimes and try out new things before you land on where you want to land. But with that being said, if you like how this looks, leave it as is. Have it going in within the hull if you want it flush. And if you really wanted to, if you want to make the escape pods bigger and have it a 2x2, you can definitely do that. Because again, just because I decided I didn't want to do it doesn't mean that you have to do it exactly the same way. Have fun with it. My best recommendation, because the more fun that you're having with this build, um, the better it's going to turn out. And that's something I really have tried to embrace on this whole tutorial, because it really has been a huge undertaking. I did not expect the Enterprise D. I didn't expect to be working on it a year later. I expected this to maybe take me six months at the most, and then I'd be done. And then I really started getting into it and realized the monster that this thing was turning into, in a good way. But I'm excited because this is going to be um, the longest build that I've ever done. It's the massive undertaking. It really has been, but it'll be worth it, because when this thing is finished, it's gonna look awesome. It already looks awesome. Like, I'm so tempted to do a tour right now just where it's at, but I'm stopping myself from doing that, because I want to wait until this thing is done to where we can really all just experience it together. But that's why I still kind of drop those little teasers here and there where I show screenshots, just so you can see a little bit of it, but not too much. Anyway, I think that's going to wrap us up today. The Enterprise D is starting to look pretty good. We're getting a little bit of detailing done on the outside, and we'll be getting a lot more done on it as we move forward. But I think that's definitely going to wrap us up today. I just want to thank everybody again for tuning in today's episode. And if you haven't, please don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button, helping me in supporting the channel. I can't thank you enough for that. And new subscribers, don't forget to hit notifications on so you get notified when those new videos drop. And speaking of new videos, you can always catch my new Minecraft videos dropping Mondays, Wednesdays, Fridays, and also Saturdays now at 7 p.m. Of course, don't forget to join the Discord channel. I'll have a link in the description below. And if you can help me out and share my channel, that would be awesome as we try to reach our goal of 1,000 subscribers. I've got the 2016 Enterprise A Retro Refit tutorial that'll be coming once we hit 1,000. Anyway, that's going to wrap it up for me. I hope everybody has a happy and safe week. And of course, I'll catch you in the next episode. And let me know what you built in Minecraft today. I'll catch you in the next episode.